everybody. My name is Daniel Swami. I am Director of Technology for ADITE, and it is my privilege that you've joined me, and I'm going to be speaking on the Biomic coloration system today. I want to thank my colleagues, Vivian Yang, as well as Jessica, for helping me facilitate this. It is a microlayering coloring system of ceramics, and it's revolutionary in the sense that this is a flowable ceramic material that can be applied to different types of restorations. So welcome, and thank you again for joining me. So we at ADITE feel that we're very innovative in promoting materials and developing materials on a consistent basis that is very easy to use, and it really does help our customers to take restorations to a new level. So as I've traveled around to different places, I noticed that we are creatures of habit. Okay, and so sometimes I find that people will not want to change even though the material is very good, but they're so used to using a type of system that that is predominantly used in their labs or in their operations that give them decent results. Having said that, I think that when we introduce new systems like the coloration systems or Easy Near Zirconia, which I'm going to be talking about, all of a sudden the light goes on and they feel like they have a material that actually will be helping them quite a bit. So ADITE believes in bringing value to your production. We don't try to introduce materials that we feel that we're just going to be selling and making a profit. So our belief is that we will always give you materials that actually do add value to your production and to your daily restoration needs. One of the things that we have developed recently is called the Easy Near Zirconia for veneers. This is different from lithium disilicate in the sense that it's a material that is classified as type 2, class 6, and it is made strictly of the zirconia material. So this has been my focus in the past, and I will be introducing this to you. And so I think that you will have a good time just listening to this and deciding if this is good for your needs. So again, this material is called Easy Near. It's made for veneers. It has a MPa level of greater than 600, which makes it a fairly strong material. Its translucency level has been increased to 60%, and this is a revolutionary material formulated for zirconia. And I will be talking about this at a later point. To start off with, I would like to introduce to you the 3D Pro. This is our very innovative material that was introduced to the market over 2.5 years ago. And many people are having much success just using this material, which is a multi-gradient material as opposed to multi-layered material. So right off the bat, when you're using this, you will find that it is a very homogeneous looking material in the sense there are no demarcations whatsoever. So replication of natural dentition. We have the 3D Pro multi-gradient zirconia. We have the Biomic coloration system, as well as the Easy Near material, which I believe is a new materials that actually will enhance our needs in the way that we look at restorations. Just to give you some background, this is kind of interesting material. So my goal is to give you some pointers and some ideas, as well as some information that you can kind of use in your everyday practices or in your labs, okay? So interestingly, 80% of the zirconia is mined in Australia. It's mass mined, and it looks sort of like dark grains of sand. And one of the questions that always arises is why in Australia? And the reason is because their radioactivity level is very, very low. So when we measure radioactivity levels that are set by FDA standards, we find that it is extremely low. And so it is very useful for the medical industry. We measure Becquerel units, which are the units for measurements for radioactivity. And we find that our materials that we use to manufacture zirconia falls well below the required amounts or the allowed amounts by the FDA. So raw sand from Australia, it goes to China, and China has a worldwide patent on yttria addition. They also do the cleaning and bleaching processes, and then they move this material to companies like Toso in Japan, which are known for actually formulating the zirconia products for manufacturing. So from Japan, it goes to the disc manufacturing factory around the world, and then it's formed into discs and blocks, and it is used in the dental lab. So this is the process cycle. 3D zirconia, 3D Zir was actually multi-gradient zirconia was researched and developed by leading scientists. The Toso powder technology was FDA approved, and all of this complies with the ISO standards. This is the conventional way of doing things. It was very tedious when we started to do these processes initially, where we took Y3 zirconia or Y4 zirconia and cut it back. We did the CAD/CAM processes and then shading, cut back, sintering, layering the zirconia, and then finishing the porcelains. This was extremely tedious process. So the whole point of introducing a material like 3D Pro is that now you've cut back on all the labor, and now you can actually make this very efficient for your dental labs and dental offices. So this is something I used to do a long time ago when I had my lab, when the initial zirconia was introduced to the market, and you can see that it's a very tedious process. We did some backlighting on the veneer materials, or actually the 3D Pro Zir, and we actually found that it does have 57% translucency, okay? A true 57% translucency. And here you can see that the CAD/CAM process, the shading, the centering, and the finishing has been dramatically reduced as far as labor. So now you can do basically three processes. It's already pre-shaded as multi-gradients. You basically design it, center it, and you finish it. Okay, so of interest these days to many people are different ways of actually doing all-on-4, all-on-6 type of restorations, implant-supported bridges. And we advocate that you use a material of choice for your base, whether it's a full zirconia restoration or a full zirconia bridge made out of the same material, or you could use a polyether ketone material, which is a PEEK material, or use a chrome cobalt material. But many people are finding that if they use the thimble design process, they can actually make single restorations or smaller bridges, and then use adhesive cements to actually place it onto the frame itself. So this is actually something that most labs would like to do these days and are trying it. And they're finding that the 3D Pro material is actually the perfect material to use here. Again, our material is made with a really good consistency, where you can see how the sharp milling strategies are used here, and the milling process actually is very, very accurate. Okay, so this was done by Sharma Dental Lab using the thimble design on a PEEK material. Patient seems really good and happy after it was placed in his mouth. So here you can see that a side view of this, it was done with 3D Pro. You can see the really nice transition of colors, all monolithic restorations, and pink was added with a light cured material. This is another view. You can see that the variance of colors with the pink, as well as the transitions of color with the 3D Pro material. Here the patient looks really nice with these bridges inserted. Okay, again, the 3D Pro multi-layer is a multi-gradient material. It has been, it was developed in 2019, and it has 57% translucency and an MPa level of 1050. So this can be used for single restorations as well as multi-unit bridges, and especially as a 14-unit or full arch bridge for implant supported bridges. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about radioactivity testing and the importance of the purity and biocompatibility. Everything that ADAT makes actually is measured for radioactivity. It falls in the ISO standards of 1372. It has a classification of type 2 class 5. I like to talk about fracture toughness because this is kind of misunderstood in our industry sometimes. The understanding fracture toughness will actually determine the type of material you're going to use for your restorations. So for example, gold has a very high fracture toughness. It's malleable. So in other words, it can be drawn into a wire, or it can be shaped differently just by adding pressure to it, but it will not break. Finding the right type of fracture toughness for zirconia, although it's difficult, but it can be done, and these materials will actually last in the mouth for a long time. One of the things that always comes up is how do you heal microfractures? There are occasions when people call me and say, you know, I was working on this bridge for a long time, but on my last bake, it fractured. And the reason is because sometimes when we overheat the metal or you see sparks flying, generally you are creating some Griffith flaws in there, which are micro flaws, microfractures that actually develop, and you don't see it with your naked eyes, but it is there. So I advocate raising the temperature to about 1,000 degrees, placing your units into the ceramic oven, and then raising the temperature to 1,000 degrees and holding it for 5 minutes with no vacuum. What this does actually, it actually seals all the microfractures that you cannot see with your eyes, and you do this prior to glazing. If you're adjusting in the operatory and you're seeing sparks fly, it's really useful and helpful if you can reseal the zirconia using this process. Okay, so the 3 types of zirconia that's out in the market, this is just for your information. There is 3Y, 4Y, 5Y, and now we're getting more into the 6Y processes, okay, or formulations. Keep in mind that with the addition of more yttria, you are adding more translucency, but you're losing a relative amount of strength. Now, how strong is strong enough? I would say if you use the classification that's already set by FDA, anything over 800 is useful in our industry. Okay. So just very quickly, just to kind of give you some background of how zirconia production methods work. First, we have the colloidal emulsion process. This is where you mix powder with some liquids and you draw it through a sieve. There's some pros and cons to using this method. Sometimes you trap very small microscopic particles of air bubbles, which sometimes forms discoloration. Okay? Uniaxial process is where you take some material, you press it from 2 different sides, and then you place it into a mold, and you use compression to actually apply the forces, and it forms into a mold. One of the big disadvantages to this is the 2 sides that are pressed actually become very hard. It can be anywhere from 120 to 150 MPa. So the tool usage is minimized here. The internal density of the material might be okay, but the sides are very, very strong and hard. So this is not a very useful way of making zirconia, although many companies do utilize it. The first two that I've mentioned actually are very somewhat inexpensive way of making zirconia. Adite chooses to use the cold isostatic pressing. This is relatively expensive way of making zirconia, but 20 tons of pressure is actually applied from all different sides, and you get a very homogeneous density of 65 MPa. We keep it in the 65 range because we feel that this is where you get maximum tool usage. Okay. So the cold CIP production, we also have a conveyor tunnel processing for pre-preparations, or I should say pre-sintering of the zirconia. Every zirconia that's made has to go through a pre-sintering process where the additives are actually burnt out, so you have a very pure zirconia. So we feel that using the conveyor tunnel processing method, every grain of zirconia is already baked and cured. Okay, you can see the microstructure of this material is very dense, 100 microns. So the denseness of this material lends to a very high strength. Excuse me. Now we have indications. We can do veneers with it. We can do inlay onlays with it. We can do anterior crowns, implant supported crowns, and full arch bridges. Okay. 57% translucency. It's a layerless, multi-gradient material with a high MPa level flexural analysis, flexural strength. I like to touch on finishing because I feel that there are so many misnomers about zirconia. Just because it looks like a white material, actually it is placed in the metal, it's placed in the metal area of the periodic chart. So it actually sometimes behaves like metal, but also like ceramics. So there are some misnomers about this metal and how to use it. I always advocate pre-polishing or actually pre-smoothing the surfaces that are going to be glazed, because this changes the optical properties when you place the glaze on there. One of the reasons you want to remove the oxidation layer prior to glaze is that you want the optical properties to be better than what it would be. So anytime you're sintering zirconia, you are actually forming an opaque layer on the surface of the restoration that forms a barrier to light absorption. Okay. So once this barrier is removed, then the light absorption becomes much better, and the optical characteristics get to be better when you apply the staining glaze or the Biomic coloration system. Adite carries a whole range of materials for polishing and contouring. So one of the things that we did at my previous workplace, we actually started to test how enamel works against natural dentition, and how zirconia works, zirconia restoration works against natural dentition. A polished zirconia, pre-polished zirconia restoration is very good in the sense that it does work like normal enamel. So during the mastication process, as well as the various cycles that it goes through, you actually do get a very nice surface. So it's imperative that you pre-polish the surface prior to glazing, and then you'll find that in this picture that the initial, the 1 year and the 3 year shows that if a pre-polished crown, how it wears. So it's very good to pre-polish it, because after 2.5 years, the felspathic glaze actually wears out, which wears out at approximately 6 microns a year. So if you're putting 2 layers of glaze on this, it will wear out in 2.5 years. So what happens is, if you have a very nice polished understructure, the occlusal surface, it's going to wear like enamel once the glaze has deteriorated. It's important to kind of check your sintering ovens. One of the questions I always get asked if people are having problems is, how do I control my furnaces? We advocate that you use a silica carbide element as opposed to a silica molybdenum element. And the reason is because the silica molybdenum element has a longer lifespan, but it works on the principle of glass formation. So every once in a while, you probably should feel the elements to make sure it's not rough and there's a good glass formed on there. Silica carbide element works on a different principle. It's extremely accurate. You don't have to, it's very little maintenance. You don't have to calibrate it, and it's going to give you very consistent results. So all of the elements that we make at Adite has the good silica carbide elements. Okay, this is the lineup we carry. We carry the multi-layer, the honors there, and this super perfect. You can see when I was doing my testing how nice the crowns look as far as translucency. So now we're getting into the Biomic coloration system. A lot of the crowns that we've done here and shown you have been a process where we've used 3D Pro as well as the Biomic coloration system. We feel that this is going to give you the optimum results because you already have all the internal colors built into the 3D Pro, and you're just, the application of colors is very minimum on the surfaces. So basically flowable ceramics, microfine layer that is placed on your restoration, and the idea is to replicate bioesthetics. So what we've done is we've actually we've researched and developed this material. So we're using very fine microparticles of ceramic, and it's in a glazed medium and with microfine color grains. Okay. One of the things that we've used is a combination of rare earth elements as well as metal oxides. What this does is actually helps the lighting effect. The lighting actually penetrates into the medium that you're using. So for example, if you're using it on zirconia, the light actually passes right through and somewhat into the medium. With metal oxide particles, it causes metamerism, where it actually the light bounces right off the surface. So color perception it's a very subjective thing. When I delve into my acrylic arts, I noticed that everybody sees color differently. So whenever you're taking a shade in the operatory or in your lab, it's important that you get a different perspective from a second person. Okay. So here you can see the use of 3D Pro, and my colleagues have done a very good job of doing this molar, where they've actually mimicked some of the characterizations that are found in natural dentition, like the decalcified areas has a perfect amount of translucency. And notice that the proper preparation is very minimum. It's a minimum invasive prep in the sense that it is a very light chamfer. So the microstructure of Biomic, it is a very dense material, and therefore you won't see any porosity on the surface. The key to using the Biomic coloration system are the 3 glazes. So we have an F glaze, we have a 3D N glaze, and a 3D V glaze. Okay, so the F glaze, the fluorescent glaze, is applied first, and right off the bat, you will notice a difference in the way that your crowns look, because the fluorescent really does help sort of match the natural dentition. And then if you wanted to go to another step further, you would actually put your characterizations in, like pericomata lines, mamelon effects, halo effects, decalcified areas, so on and so forth, craze lines, and then you would actually fire that with the F glaze, and then you would put a new layer, a second layer of 3D N or a 3D V glaze. Now the 3D N glaze actually is a very nice glaze in the sense that it actually lowers the value somewhat. And if you were to look at it, you have this really nice violet look to it, a very slight violet look to it that actually lowers the value. In many instances, especially with zirconia restorations, Dentists will look at it and say, you know, it really does match the crown, the shade guide, and it looks good on the model, but if I place it in the mouth, it actually has a very high value. And this is because the material characteristics of zirconia, as well as the light that is passing through there, it just bounces off. So here 3D N glaze was developed so that you can actually lower the value. The 3D V material is used for viscosity. You can actually add proximal contacts or incisal edges if you were to mix it into a thicker viscosity. Okay. We provide schematics for people that want to learn how to use these colors. It's a very easy approach to using colors. It's also almost like paint by numbers. If you wanted to take it to a different level, especially on the interior regions, then you would use a step 2 or a 3D V or a 3D method. Here you can see the porcelain crown, the glass ceramic crown, and the zirconia restoration. Now you can see all the different characterizations that have been used with this flowable ceramic paste and in different consistencies, and very, very beautiful results. The delivery system here is the aesthetic kit has all these colors with the color guide, as well as liquid 1 and liquid 2, and two brushes. So you can actually create, as I mentioned previously, a 2D effect with the F glaze. And if you wanted to go to the next level, then you would use a 3D glazes. Viscosity control, you can actually make this into a thicker glaze. And as I mentioned previously, you can add proximal contacts and incisal edges as you wish. So this is really useful in the sense that you don't have to do another add-on bake. One of the things that is very helpful now is that I've talked to a lot of dentists and done classes for them where they buy a small glaze unit in their operatories, and they teach their staff to actually use this material to change colors, as well as change the, if there's a need to do an additive process of proximals and incisals, they can do it. And dental assistants and technicians gravitate to this very easily because of the ease of use of this material. Here's some color enhancement guides that we offer. If you needed this, you could ask somebody at ADITE and we can provide you this. Okay. Here, I've talked a little bit about fluorescence. I think that the fluorescent properties of the glaze is very beautiful, and this will enhance the looks of your crowns instantly. If nothing else, I advocate that you try the 2 blues, because you are changing the depth perception. You're also changing the optical characteristics, as well as applying a microfine layer where you are changing the translucencies if you wish. Okay, this is a very generic restoration or zirconia. 1 glaze is applied and fired with the F glaze. The next glaze is a 3D V glaze, and you can see the really good results that my colleague has obtained. This is one that I tried out where just for the purpose of testing, you can see the very light to medium chamfer. And this application process was a build-up process with the Biomic, and I did 2 to 3 bakes, and I got the thick layer process of making sure that all the contours were nice and all the different characterizations that can be placed using the Biomic coloration system. So here you can see the translucency. By the way, these are all monolithic restorations made out of 3D Pro. It's a side view of it. And here are all the colors with the guide. Okay, again, this is a little bit dramatic, but I wanted to test to make sure that somebody that is using a little bit of this material actually can create monolithic restorations with this type of result. So I know that this material, because it's so easy to use, actually will shine in your hands. And those of you that are doing this anterior cases like this on a regular basis, you'll find that the Biomic coloration system is a very unique system, very easy to use system, and with optimum results. Okay, not always do you need a lot of translucency. Here's a bridge that is done where we mimic some pathology, and we use the Biomic system, and the colors look very nice. And another view of it. Okay, in conjunction with the aesthetic kit, we have the Biomic gum system, and this is revolutionary in the sense that no longer do you have to build pink material onto the gums, but you can use a very thin layer of this innovative material, and the tissue colors form very easily. Okay, again, it's a flowable ceramic system meant to replicate natural gum aesthetics. Okay, in a natural setting, you can see a lot of the different colors that are there in the pink. You can see from the vestibule area and the mucosa area, all transitions of colors. In the free gingiva and the sulcus area is a little bit lighter. And also you can replicate the vein structures with the red. So we have 6 colors. Okay. 6 colors. We feel that this is the best in the industry as far as the reds and pinks that are available. And you can easily replicate natural gum tissue now. So light, medium, and dark, all these colors are available to you. It's just a matter of trying it. And most people that use this actually on their first try, they gravitate towards it, and they tell me how easy it is to use this material. Okay, so for optimum results, we advocate that you use our entire system, meaning that the 3D Pro material, the aesthetic kit of the Biomic, as well as the gum materials. There are various ways of doing all-on-4. So this is one way of doing it, where you use one of our zirconias, a strong zirconia, and form a base with thimble designs, and then you use individual restorations. Here is something that one of our colleagues did on the very first try. Used 3D Pro for the teeth and did it in a one-bake situation where he used pink tissue material that is Biomic and fired it once. One of the virtues of this material is that, because you don't have to do multiple bakes, there are fewer chances of fracturing. Comes in 4-gram bottles. Here we have a step-by-step, I should say, the coloration system from cream to natural pink to purple pink. We have dark pink, and then also the blood red, as well as everything suitable for modifications. Step-by-step directions are all included in the guide, so it's really easy to use. And most people on the very first try get very good results. Keep in mind here, there's a graduation of colors. So if the dentist says pink, it's a relative term. So we offer a guide. And for the dentist, it becomes very easy for them to take a picture of this against the tissue, and then you have a base to work off of. Okay, again, we can mix this into a thick consistency. Here, we don't use the F, the fluorescent glaze, we use the V or the F, a 3D V and the 3D N, only because you don't need fluorescence in the gums. Okay, some various ways of actually looking at warm areas, hues, color saturation, and this is all provided to you if you need it. This is the conventional way of doing it, very tedious process where you mill out the base, okay? And you have to do a major cutback, either in the design process or manually, very tedious in the way it used to be done. Again, we're using a 3D Pro, single restorations, and then building the porcelain. This was the traditional way of achieving gum aesthetics. Extremely tedious process, and you're firing this. There are all kinds of needs to actually control the CTE, the push and the pull between the zirconia, as well as the porcelain that's been added. So this always created some issues. Although the results were good, you really have to spend a lot of time and effort to achieve results like this. So now with the pink material, you design it on a 1-to-1 ratio. and it is finished very, very quickly. Okay. This is done by Louis Sharp, one of my colleagues, and on his very first try, he was able to achieve this result. So now we can talk a little bit about the EasyNear material. This zirconia was made for veneers, and now it's possible to use this veneer as a very thin material, a very thin preparation, and etch it and bond it. Okay, so very thin minimum preparation. You can actually do a 2 millimeter preparation if you wish. The two techniques of etching, I'm going to be talking about that because that's critical. A very easy bonding procedure. It's very strong and translucent. We can use a multi-gradient material that we offer. So we basically offer at this point 7 different materials to choose from, and that perfect opacity to block out the understructure. So we expand the scope of clinical applications with this zirconia. The MPa level and 3-point bending test shows that it's 40% higher than the normal glass ceramics. The biocompatibility to tissue is very good and minimum invasive. You can also do no prep veneers. So this material is developed to have greater than 600 MPa, as well as the translucency level is about 60%. So now the indications are for veneers. You can use it as full anterior crowns in the anterior region and inlay onlays. We've covered that 2 millimeters, and then it's the etching technique I will talk about next. So basically what you want to do is you want to sandblast the intaglio surface, okay? And you can do it by adding the 2 methods of additive process of using a spray glaze, okay? You spray it on the intaglio surface, or you use a very thin slurry of the F glaze. You fire that in your oven, your ceramic oven, and then you use the conventional techniques of etching with the hydrofluoric gel. So after the modification of the zirconia, the bonding surface has the same bonding properties as glass. Okay. Here are the patterns that we've actually looked at under the scanning electron microscope. You can see that it does form very nice etchable surfaces. Again, we want to advocate that you do a very thin preparation. You can do a 4 millimeter in the axial walls, 0.2 in the cervical, and 0.4 in the incisal area. Classification is class 6. We're using Y5 and Y6Y zirconia, 5Y and 6Y zirconia, and it falls under the classification of type 2 class 6. Here's the composition if you needed it. And by the way, it's good to have all this information so that you can, if the patient asks or you want to refer to it, you can quickly refer to this. We did some comparison of bonding and shear strength before and after the agent was applied, and we grouped it into categories, and we found that the bonding surface after the sandblasting process does work very efficiently. We advocate a 5% hydrofluoric acid erosion and for 20 seconds, and this forms the best dentin tubules. Some more pictures of the surface after the glass melt. Okay, so here are some of the properties, some of the data that we've combined of different materials. We find that the EasyNear really is one of the best materials out there for veneers. The strength comparison versus lithium disilicate, even though lithium disilicate is a good material, we feel that zirconia is much stronger. So therefore, and with the better optical properties and light refraction and absorption. One of the good virtues of this material is that you can load up about 38 veneers at max on this type of platform in the disk, and it becomes very efficient for the labs to actually use this. Whereas lithium disilicate tends to be very expensive, kind of harder to mill also. So seven that we offer ranges from bleach white multilayer to high value multilayer, low value multilayer, extra white, bleach white, high value, and low value. So these are various options that you have at your disposal. Some cases that are done on the models, and that, as you can see light through it because it's very thin. In situ, bleach white, which is a very nice material, and the bleach white that has been placed in the mouth. Sorry, we offer a guide for all our materials, so the dentist is able to take a shade. It is made out of the very same material as the multilayer, or as the veneer material. For 3D Pro, we offer a guide also that's made out of the same material. And the reason is because we want to compare apples to apples. So if you're using a composite guide, like the Vita Classical or the 3D Master Shade, it's actually a composite material, and you really don't get a good, you don't get the exact optical properties when you take a photograph. So we've developed all these different guides for all our materials so that you can get a one-to-one guide comparison. And we offer this chart to the right so the dentist can actually look at the understructure. He or she can decide which material will be best to use for the patient. Okay, we offer this on all different sizes and shapes with different machines. Okay. Here is the firing chart that we show. If you need this, we actually provide this with every disc that we sell. I wanted to mention that Adite is we consider ourselves a full-fledged company where we provide everything for the digital industry, whether it's intraoral scanners to tabletop scanners, consumable items, grinding tools, ceramic ovens, milling tools. Also, we have finishing tools, different scanners for intraoral scanners, so on and so forth. And we believe that we can provide you these innovative products, and they will be successful in your hands, and they will be very easy to use. And we provide maximum support also. So if something is not right, you can call one of us. We have various people in the US that actually will answer your questions. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you following this, and hopefully you will use our materials and you will have good success. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Digital Dental Craftsman's live webinar on the Biomic coloration system. We're pleased to have with us Daniel Swami, who is the Director of Technology at Adite. Thanks for joining us, Daniel. And without further ado, we'll get right into it. We have a few questions from people watching us online. Daniel, so we have a question from Molly Crawford asking on the veneer, on the zirconia easy veneer, how do you bond the zirconia veneer if it cannot be edged, or what is the procedure on how to do that? You know, will it affect the fitness?
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate you having me on. That is the critical part about veneers, is that you have to etch it and bond it because it's such a thin material. And as you know, zirconia does not etch. So there are basically two methods of preparing it to be etched. And both are additive processes. So the first method is to actually use a spray glaze, and there are various spray glazes on the market that you can buy. And that is the preferred method right now, where you would spray a very thin amount, no more than 25 microns, because we find that 25 microns actually will etch beautifully. So just to kind of give you a little background, the human hair is about 100 microns. So 25 microns is a very, very small amount. So having said that, you would spray it in the intaglier, or the surface that needs to be bonded. And in a very short time, you'll see that surface actually turn a little bit light or white, which means that it's drying. And so what you want to do is you actually want to remove any excess that is on the marginal surfaces, okay? And at that point, it can be fired in the ceramic oven according to the manufacturer's directions. Okay, so the second method is also very unique and very easy. It's placing a thin slurry of material on the intaglio, or the surface to be bonded, and firing it. Now, how thin should it be? If you use the Biomic system, we have the F glaze in there, and it will be, when you mix it with the liquid medium, medium one, it will be very, very soupy, okay? And you'll get the hang of it once you do it a few times, and it should not affect the fit. So those are two ways of actually applying a coat of feldspathic glaze or glass that will be etched with your regular etching materials.
Wow, very cool. Thank you very much for that answer. We also have another question from Nathan Haynes. He wants to know, how is the translucency on the incisal edge of these easy veneers, compared to Emax? Or like, do you stain it? But what do you recommend?
Yeah, that is another good question. So basically, we have 7 different products for in the Easeneer line, and each one is designed to actually correspond to an understructure that the dentist will choose. So let's just say, for example, if the understructure is in A3.5, if he goes down the chart, he will actually see which material is going to be best to cover the understructure. Because as you know, the veneers can be prepped on any surfaces about 2 to 3/10 of a millimeter. So especially in the cervical area, you can prep it down to 2/10 or 3/10, and then on the axial walls, it can be anywhere from 3/10 to 5/10. So it just depends on whether the dentist is trying to cover tetracycline stains or trying to provide the patient with something that's going to be very aesthetic. Having said that, we do have 2 in the lineup, A1 and B1, in the 3D Pro, which we've actually included in the Easeneer system. And those are gradient zirconia that has beautiful incisals. So if you wanted to create nice incisals, it already has, the materials already have a translucency built into it, which resembles lithium disilicate, or if not better than that.
So you would stain it?
You can stain it if you wanted to enhance the materials, block out some more light, or create more translucency. And that's what the Biomic system has been developed to do. Okay, so you actually are putting a micro layer of ceramics with the Biomic system, which obviously changes the optical characteristics of the material. Light penetrates beautifully into it because we use very little metal oxides. We use rare earth elements, which have been proven to have very good light absorption qualities. So the system is actually designed so that you can use the Biomic system on the veneers also.
Well, we have another question, interesting question from Ashley Jackson. She wants to know, I guess, two things. One, firing time for this easy near material, and also firing, I guess, temperatures. Like how long does it take to sinter, and I guess how long does it take to, I guess, run it up in the regular porcelain?
Yeah, we can answer that that's a good question also. So let's just assume you are using the Biomic system. Everything in the Biomic system will fire at 730 Celsius and held for 1 minute. Okay, so here again, if you are using a slurry bake on the intaglio or the surface that needs to be bonded, you would cover that area with a slurry bake. If you want to do some external staining with the Biomic system, it all can be fired in one bake. And that's the beauty of the Biomic system, is that everything is fired in one bake. The temperature is raised, and everything that we sell will have instructions for use. So it all fires at 730 Celsius and is held for 1 minute. And the whole objective is to actually create a system and materials that can be used very easily, and it has no steep learning curve.
So when you say 730, does that mean that you can do like speed sintering of the zirconia?
You can do this. So the initial sintering is done in a sintering oven, as you know. That is very different from the ceramic oven. If you wanted to do a fast sintering, yes, we can provide you that cycle also. It's a 3-hour cycle that we advocate. My preference obviously is to do the long cycle, 12-hour cycle overnight.
Because, like, will it affect translucency if you go?
Yes, yes, it will, but not dramatically. You will still get 90% of the results that you want to accomplish. But if you really had some time, you could actually do an overnight cycle, which gives you the best translucency.
All right, cool. Very nice. Thank you very much. And we have another question from Jordan Sanchez. He wants to know, what is the specialty of 8-3D Pro compared to other multi-layer zirconia?
Yeah, so as I discussed in the PowerPoint, 3D Pro is a very unique material in the sense that it is a multi-gradient material as opposed to multi-layer. So if you were to, it's a very proprietary process of making zirconia. So if you were to kind of observe the printing process, where it's an additive process. So as opposed to taking amounts of zirconia, weighing it out, and then compressing it into layers, we have a buildup technique. So this is very unique to the dental world, manufacturing world, in that every portion of the material is very well controlled by computers, and they sort of build into a gradient material. And so you have no demarcations. It's a very homogeneous looking restoration or crown that you will process out of it. And one of the things that we've done is we have created it to have almost 90 to 95% of the shade guide coloration. So we also make this beautiful 3D Pro shade guide. So you're comparing apples to apples, because the light reflection obviously changes.
Very nice.
when you have a composite shade guide like the classical shade guide or the master shade guide. So the dentist actually takes a picture against the shade guide, and it gives you the perfect results or the perfect picture to replicate.
So the shade guide itself is made out of, like, the teeth are made out of zirconia, which is the same zirconia you're sintering, so you can actually know what it's exactly going to look like.
Exactly the same. Yes, exactly the same.
Very cool. All right. So, and then just looks like we have one last question from Emily Stark. She's asking, why 3 glazes? They have the glaze F, they have the 3DV, and they have the 3DN. If you can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, so again, this is a very good question. So the Biomic system was created for users that want to have a natural look or to replicate natural dentition. So first off, you will use the F glaze, which is a fluorescent glaze. And as you know, fluorescence is found in natural dentition. So immediately, if you just wanted to do a 1 bake process and it's imperative that you start off with the F glaze. So F glaze is a fluorescent glaze. It will give you a 2D effect. Okay. Now, if you wanted to go to an enhanced level of coloration, you would color all your characterizations in, like the mamelon structures, pericomotor lines, decalcified areas, whatever you have. You would do the F glaze on it, fire it, and then you would place another glaze over it, which would be your second bake, and that would include the 3D-N and the 3D-V glazes, okay? Now, the distinction between the F glaze and the 3D-V glaze is the fact that 3D-V and the 3D-N glaze can actually be mixed into a thicker viscosity, and you can add proximal contacts with it, or you could add incisal edges with it, and not have to do an additional fire to add porcelains. So many technicians that try this, they think that it's a really good concept because they're saving time and energy and making the crowns look good at the same time. So again, you know, the 3D-V glaze was developed to actually, it's called viscosity glaze. It was created to do adding of proximal contacts and incisal edges, as well as create a 3D effect. If you were to look at the 3D-N glaze, which is a very unique glaze, you will actually notice a slight violet tone. So using this glaze actually lowers the value a relative amount. So if the dentist is saying, your zirconia crowns look really good against the shade guide, but in the mouth it is very high value, which is often the case. So if you were to do a two-part process and use the 3D-N glaze, which is kind of my preference, you will actually lower the value and the surrounding teeth will actually absorb the light of the crown.
Very nice. So would you color, or would you do a coat of glaze and then do another bake with the colors, any additional touch up of colors, so you get the fluorescence and then you get whatever chroma you're trying to add with additional stains?
Yes, that's a good question. So obviously you want to always start off with the F glaze. Never go to the 3D-N or the 3D-V glaze, although they look kind of like exotic. Yeah. Most people say, well, I'm just going to go to the 3D-V glaze and the 3D-N glaze. The difference is that the particle size is a little bit different. Those two glazes, the 3D-V and the 3D-N glaze, were developed for different and specific purposes.
And where can we get these products? We have someone, John Doe, asked.
Yeah, all these products can be found at sharesidesolutions.com. So all they have to do is log in, and they will find all these products. And if you were to have any questions, or if you had any questions, you can either contact me or go to the ADITE US site. And we're partners with Chairside Solutions, so we work hand in hand, and those products can all be found on that site.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And we look forward to the hands-on course in September. I know you'll be there. And for anyone else who wants to ask more questions, you can comment on this video and we'll be happy to answer them for you. Most importantly, thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
You too. Thank you.